Hello, everyone. We're now live at TEDx Beacon Street, and sitting next to me is Dan Bricklin, CTO of Alpha Software Corporation. Dan, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you.
You just got off the stage. How did the talk go? And would you mind telling us a little bit about what was the talk?
Well, people tell me the talk went well, so I hope it did.
Good.
But the talk was about the story of VisiCalc. VisiCalc is known as a pioneering spreadsheet. Many people call it the first electronic spreadsheet as we know them today. So I first explained how important that it was that before VisiCalc, people basically did things by hand that they now do on electronic spreadsheet.
Right.
And that the spreadsheet was pretty important to the birth and early success of the personal computer industry and Apple Computer in particular, where Steve Jobs said that if VisiCalc had been on some other computer, he'd be interviewing somebody else right now.
Wow.
So it was important to the history of Apple and to getting personal computers on business desks. And most of the talk I spend going over my background and what I went through to be able to come up with the idea and turn it into what it was, so that maybe we can learn something from that. What was it that was special about my background that was different than other people at the time? Why me? Why was I lucky enough to be the right person at the right time?
Right. If you wouldn't mind me asking, so why you? What was your background?
Well, my background was I had background in not only computers, which was computer programming, which was unusual in those days. I mean, there were mainframes, and you couldn't just go and get your own computer in those. And not only that, I also had a lot of experience in interactive uses of computers, like word processing and text editing, that most people did not have. I had a lot of most of the people who were really into a lot of specialized programming worked on operating systems, and they didn't work on things that real people used in the field, but I did. Then I ended up going to business school, where I got exposed to all of the different things that business needs. And there I came up with saw that people actually use numbers and words a lot together, and came up with the idea of something like word processing with numbers, which became this. And then we built it in an attic in Arlington, Massachusetts. In the East Coast we have attics, the West Coast they have garages, and it eventually was announced. Most people didn't see anything special about it, but a few people did. But within 6 years, it was pretty accepted that you needed a spreadsheet to do all sorts of calculation. And eventually, we realized that this was a really important thing. And here it is, almost 40 years later, and they work in a very similar way. And I explain a bit about how I came up with the ideas. So you get to see about the particular background I had, and you also get to see how I built an early prototype to actually work out the ideas and the problems and figure out solutions to those problems through the prototype.
And did you, back in your student days, did you have a sense of the vision of how you're going to revolutionize this, how people do data crunch?
When you're in most any field where you're building something, engineers, especially in computers, of course you believe the thing that you're going to do is going to change the world and be the most amazing thing ever, and it rarely is. I had that happen before and all, but if you don't have it, you need that to get you to move ahead. But it became clear that it was going to be a very useful thing, and some people who became very important people in the industry got it. Ben Rosen, who was at the time at Morgan Stanley an analyst, one of the leading analysts on the electronic business and then the personal computer business, he saw it and said, who knows, someday VisiCalc might be the software tail that wags and sells the personal computer dog. He then went on to fund Lotus Development Corporation, which became the leading spreadsheet before itself, and fund Compact Computer. So he got it. There were people who got it, and many people got their introduction to personal computers through using VisiCalc. Now, one important thing, I think, in hindsight, is that the people that the electronic spreadsheet appealed to were in money, like venture capitalists and other funds. So they understood the value of Apple and places like that. Other business people understood the value. People at IBM, there were the people at the very top of IBM understood the importance of it. It was a story I heard from the guy who led the development of the IBM PC, Don Estridge, may he rest in peace, was that I think he was going to show VisiCalc running on the IBM PC to the head of IBM. He was going to try to explain. He said, no, I already know how to do it. And, it was shocking.
Yeah.
So that some people did get it, and eventually a lot of people. And eventually, I mean, now that's the way a lot of business is done. And it shows that with the right idea and the right tool, you can really change the world. And you can do it, in an attic.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the value of the early investors who were able to spot the potential of this software. What do you think in the technology business, which is so fast changing, what's the role of investors, corporations, and companies?
Well, money is helpful to certain things to move ahead in certain ways. I mean, you do have to pay, people do have to get paid and all. So in this case, the fact that the investors saw the value of the personal computers was a helpful thing. It meant that they took it seriously. They come to the conferences and stuff like that. But the personal computer business was, I think, smaller than the pantyhose industry back in 81 or 82. I mean, it was, it's now a huge thing and has great impact. And of course, it now has gone to the mobile phones and all that other thing has completely affected the world. We knew it was possible, and it was in science fiction, it had it, but we didn't know how we would make it happen and when it would happen. And sometimes we were too early, and sometimes we were too late, and I was lucky enough to be just at the right time.
That's a fascinating story. And when you're looking back, what are some of the lessons that you would pass on to next generations of computer engineers or entrepreneurs who wanted to get in this business? And what would be your advice?
Well, one thing that worked for me was understanding the need of building things that I understood the need for it. I mean, I was an MBA student. I was making the MBA student's favorite tool, or maybe the one they curse, who knows. And the one thing is being able to understand what you're building for. But you have to understand that people will use your tools that you build for what they need it for. And you won't, I had no clue of all the things that they ended up, but at least it was useful for the things that I designed it for.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is build prototypes. Don't just get lots of money and build the big. Start by building a simple version of what you're trying to build, and use that and figure it forces you to work out important problems. And another thing I did was, which a lot of developers tell you, is write documentation. So not only should developers go be on the tech support lines and go out in the field, they also should write some documentation, because when you try to explain what you've done, you find out that it isn't easy to explain, and maybe you should have done it a different way. And that's important.
Absolutely, and I'm sure they will appreciate your advice. So for the general public who are interested in learning about the corporation or the work you do, where can they find more information?
Well, they can look at Bricklin.com,
Bricklin.
and on there in the history section, there's the VisiCalc story, which is a lot more detail than I go into in the talk. Though I show some things in the talk that I did not show anywhere else. I got some new stuff for that.
Right.
Satisfaction.
Absolutely.
But they can find stuff on Bricklin.com.
Thank you for sharing with us. And if you want to see Dan's full talk, please feel free to go on to TEDxBeaconstreet.com. Thank you. Thank you.